Good morning and welcome to the final episode of Money Matters for this season, ending here in 2023. We are broadcasting live from the heart of St. Kitts and Nevis. And today's show is particularly special as we delve into recent budget announcements made by Prime Minister Dr. Terrance Drew, which marks significant strides in our nation's economic and social development. Now, these changes include increases in minimum wage and social security distributions. We see civil servants getting an 8% raise, as well as other government auxiliary workers, pensioners, I think were also mentioned. We see a reduction in corporate taxes and the launch of a novel government savings program focused on children, and we'll delve more into that. And all these together are set to reshape the financial landscape of St. Kitts and Nevis. So as we unpack these developments, we'll explore what they mean for you, your family, and your businesses, and how will these changes impact the average citizen and the broader economy. What opportunities and challenges might they each bring? Now, on the other end of the show, other half of the show, we'll pivot to a topic that's maybe on everyone's mind in some way as we approach the new year: financial resolutions. Not your typical New Year's resolutions, but financial New Year's resolutions. It's a time to set goals, make plans, and envision a year of prosperity and financial well-being. We make a decision, we put our vision board in place, and we execute. We'll provide insights and strategies that would help you set realistic financial resolutions, and more importantly, hopefully help you stick to them. So stick with us as we dissect these crucial topics, offering a blend of, well, hopefully expert analysis. If we get one of our guests, he's had a conflict, an unexpected conflict. And if not, I'll try my best to provide the analysis and the practical advice. I usually try to get a guest perspective. So, maybe, we all have our opinions, but I usually want somebody else to chime in. So whether you're a business owner, a government employee, or concerned citizen, this episode is tailored to provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to navigate these pending changes and make the most of the year ahead. So, Jamster, good morning to you. I trust that you had a beautiful weekend here in St. Kitts Nevis. The weather was amazing, and last night was a very beautiful starry sky.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's something we probably take for granted when we live down here, right?
Right. Trust me.
Yeah, where you live, I guess because of city lights, it just drowns out the starlight.
Yeah, I don't really see much, and I actually more suburban than in a city center. But yeah, the light pollution is crazy. So last night I was on Frigate Bay Beach at the docks last night, and I just looked up and I was like, wow, you could see all these constellations and everything we learned about in school. But at first, as we do all the time, we'll start with some financial news, I think.
But you want to do the sponsor first?
Yeah, we could do the sponsor first, and then come right back in.
And get right into it.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome. And we're back. So if we look at around the Caribbean, and usually we start each show with some Caribbean financial news, we see the IMF approving new funding for Suriname and everything that comes with IMF approval, usually some structural adjustment and some changes there. The Antigua and Barbuda economy last week, they also had their budget address, and they announced some increases as well for civil servants and pensioners, as well as they're looking at their AABST tax, which is a sales tax, very similar to our value-added tax. But they're also projecting, or they had an 8% growth rate in 2023. So that's pretty good, right? And this is also why I think St. Kitts and Nevis recorded around a 9%. So next year, the goal is to have very early in January a show on economic outlook of St. Kitts and Nevis and maybe the region, because we have ECLAC, which is they look at the economic activity in the region, and they're saying that they're seeing signs of lower growth trajectory. So maybe it's a situation where we have contractions in some islands, a part of the region that they're investigating, and you look at St. Kitts and Nevis, where we're projected at 9%. 2023, and then we have Antigua, which is around 8%. And this is coming off of the heels of COVID. And naturally, it's going to take us some time for our economies to adjust. And that's why you're seeing across the different regions, different countries, you're seeing increases going back to government work, as we saw it in Grenada, where we saw a 25% increase. Antigua, St. Kitts, we're giving that 8%. And we also see changes in minimum wage. In Antigua, you're seeing similar changes. I can't remember what their number was, maybe 9, or maybe it was 14. I think it could have been even double digits. But either way, all these are ways in which to continue to fuel our economy. You know what was really interesting, Jamster, as we talk about the news and we segue into this? And typically, I wanted to start with the budget first, but since Mr. Warner is going to be maybe a little bit late, we could probably start with the other aspect of the show. What do you think? Right?
Yeah, we could go ahead.
We could do that.
I hope he makes it for at least even 20 minutes.
Yeah. So then if not, we just shift, and I'll give you my perspective, which is not too far off from his, based on our conversation on Friday. But what I was going to say is, what was I going to say? Wow. Okay, so we're going to shift back a little bit to some more international news, and we're seeing the stock market has surged in the last few weeks, and we've seen that a lot of people have recouped some of the losses that we experienced this year. The war in Ukraine, we saw some of the sanctions finally taking effect on Russia and what that means for the Russian continued annexation of Ukraine. We see the U.S. government getting apathetic when it comes to funding, while at the same time major calls for ceasefires across with the Israeli-Hamas tensions that we have as well over there in Gaza Strip area. So we have all these conflicts, while at the same time stock markets are up and doing better. And again, we're ending the year strong financially in general, right? So, which is all good things. That's what we want. But at the same time, we also need some resolution to some of these global conflicts, because the impact that they have here in our region, in our country, is significant. When you're talking about the price of oil, you're talking about transportation costs, you're talking about delays in deliveries and so on. And that usually happens whenever we have these international conflicts. So, and a positive too is the Federal Reserve Chairman, that's the equivalent to our governor here at the ECCB. He's saying that they're probably going to cut rates in 2024. And in cutting rates, that's a strong signal that their measures were to manage inflation, and they are working. So we should see prices coming down in general, and that will be a positive for all of us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. All right, so let me get started in today's topics. And again, it's the final show, so if you have any comments, feel free to call in 466-0989, 662-0989, 762-0989. And if you're overseas in the US or Canada, 718-285-6984. And the UK, 033-344-0065. All right, so let me jump in on the financial New Year's resolutions. And this season, we started this show and journey back in the summer, And I'm so happy for the momentum that we've built. It's an important show. People have been coming up to me and commenting on this show, even just this morning, getting those comments. So we're reaching people, and this is such a necessary platform and conversations that we're having. So we're going to talk real quickly about financial resolutions for the new year. And it's a look forward. You know, last week we had a show with Mrs. Remy Layden where we had a look backwards. And this one is specifically, it's the same thing, but it's a look in a different direction. Because you need to plan, because failure to plan is literally planning to fail. And that's why having these conversations about what we think about the new year, what we think will happen, becomes that much more important. So let's start with something that is on the simplest front. One of the first shows that we had, we talked about setting realistic financial goals, right? Emphasizing the importance of setting achievable and specific financial resolutions for the new year. And they could be simple. It could be something as simple as I want to pay off this credit card, or I want to end this payment for courts, or I want to pay off TDC for something, right? But whatever it is, it has to be achievable and it has to be specific. So we want to identify what these goals are that you may have. It could be to finally build your house and take advantage of some of those mortgages. But whatever it is, goals could also recognize that goals could be short term, less than a year. Goals could be intermediate term, let's say 1 to 3 years or 1 to 5 years, and goals can be long term, which is 5 and plus. And actually, this coincides with some of the changes that we've seen, our proposed changes we've seen from the government and the Prime Minister's announcement, where one of the things they're pushing now is participatory or contributory retirement plans for some government workers that, were hired, I think it was after 2012 or 2013. All right, so setting realistic goals is at the epicenter of everything that we do. It's a part of the financial resolutions. Every year we have these New Year's resolutions. We're going to do this. We are thinking about the future. We're optimistic. Well, let's be specific when we include that and have financial resolutions, starting with goals. Segment it. What do we want to achieve? I started 2023 and my goal was I need to go into real estate. I want more into real estate because honestly, that's where the money is. You make money in several ways on real estate. When somebody pays your rent, it helps with your equity position. They're helping to pay your mortgage, and then at the same time, you're building equity, you're building assets, you're building collateral, and so on. Right. So what did I do? I go out and I found a couple lots of land, and I'm like, okay, now it's time to hit. Right? So whatever that goal is, it could be a savings goal. It could be a goal to pay off your debt. But you want it to be specific. You want it to be measurable. All right? You want it to be achievable or attainable. It needs to be realistic. The goal can't be, I want to save $1 million in 12 months when you only have a net cash flow of, say, $500 a month. That won't be realistic. And then it has to be time-bound. When do you want to do it? Within a year, within 3 years, within 5 years, within 10 years, whatever it is, right? But it has to be smart. It has to be a smart financial goal. Sit down across the table as a couple. Ask your partner, right? Listen to them. Even ask your children. That's what Mrs. Layden said. Involve them in the process now. Make these decisions as a household. Have your individual goals, but also have your household goals from a utility. And that would help to maximize satisfaction overall in the household. If we reduce financial stress, overall, we will do better as a people. All right? Because financial stress is one of the leading causes in issues in marriages and just in issues in personal relationships in general. All right? And so how do we set these? And another thing could be looking at investment opportunities. And that's something that I've been asked a lot, right? What can I invest in? I need money to turn over now. I have some money, but I need to get a return now. Oh my gosh. And like, I understand the need for now. I understand the need for instant gratification. But we can't confuse investing and things like day trading or investing and things like savings. We have to be really careful I have a better understanding of what it is that we're asking for. Investing is a long game, all right? Investing is a long game. Some of the most successful investors in the world, they implement what is called a buy and hold strategy. And in fact, most of the people here that invest in the average citizenry, they that have shares in National Bank, TDC, etc., they have that buy and hold strategy.
I'm glad you said that. I wanna stress the contrast between what you just said and what usually pertains here. We are an instant gratification people. We want ish yesterday. We want, we want a car. We want it now. We don't want to wait. Um, how do you how do you build a mindset that a mindset that actually thrives on delayed gratification, because that's what the long game is.
So we have two different types of people, right? And this really affects every financial decision we make, even how we respond to financial news like the Prime Minister's announcement. We have the present focused individuals where they're focused on now, right? That's where they get their satisfaction. They earn a check, they earn a dollar, they spend it because they need it now. It's not wrong, it's just a preference. And I don't want to call it a behavioral bias as much as a behavioral preference. And then we have the future-oriented. They're the ones that could delay the gratification, that subset, that subset of the population that heard these announcements and took a step back and say, hey, okay, so what's the long-term effect of these decisions? They're the ones that go to the supermarket and read the nutrition labels for added sugar. They're the ones that when they're engaging in adult behavior, they protect themselves, right, without just going in head first. They're the ones
Head first
that,
is good too.
yeah,
But
they're the ones that take that extra step, right, in terms of planning for the future. They have to be incentivized even less. So if we want to move the needle and reduce this need for instant gratification, the first thing is to stop feeding it. That's the first thing. We feed instant gratification, and we've seen it this past year with a redistribution of income that may not be in the best interest of the average person in the long term. In the short term, it's amazing. I'm all in support for it. But if we were to consider the long term, there are other more productive uses of that, right? Those types of funds. So it's part of sticking to the
speaking
strategy.
about the dividends, that
The
were paid out.
dividends, the other, and that's the thing. It's this narrow line to cross, right? Because I understand that people need relief, right? But that's what I'm saying. So you have different pockets of people that would see it differently. Because I had some in my inbox. I was like, hey, this is a great thing. You're giving money back to people. Yes, and I agree. But then I had others in my inbox. What about the long term? This is not how we end poverty. Like, seriously, right? You don't end poverty or bring people out of poverty by just giving handouts. We have to provide the framework for them to elevate as a result of that handout. All right. So it's all about creating strategies and commitments to help to reduce them. So if you see somebody that really likes spending, right? If any resolution that we have, any financial goal that they put down, be debt reduction or getting into investments, etc., you have to look at the personality type of that individual. That's one of the first shows we had. What's our money personality? If that person is entrepreneurial, they'll find productive uses of that money. They'll take that $500, that $1,000, that $2,500 distribution, and they will probably start a small business. And from that small business, they would reinvest into that business. Then you have the other individuals where they use that money and they go lime. They go party. They go on the strip. They go up Lime Keel. They do whatever. And that money just goes away. So for those set of individuals, we have to really help them to help themselves, right? So we need this framework. One of the things that when we do talk about the government pension that they set up, I want to see that go private. I want to see that the average citizen has access to a retirement income outside of Social Security, because we see that has some potential issues as well, and actually have the ability to earn. Now, the problem is a lot of the the incentives usually surround tax breaks, but we don't have an income tax. So a lot of government policy then, how do you offset that, right? If I give you something and I'm giving up something as a government, the government needs their revenue. So we have this delicate balancing act. But it's in our interest to assist those individuals, those present-focused individuals, those focused on the brands, those focused on living for the now, because they could become a ward of the society or strain on their personal families and relationships, right? So all that is a part of it. That was probably a lot to answer for everything you just asked.
No, but yeah, I mean, what I would say is probably easier said than done, because the culture is so driven by the now, and I want it now. I want it yesterday.
Well, that's driven again from, it's been years of this, right, where we've created a dependency on government, where we've looked towards government to take care of us or fix it, and honestly,
and that exacerbates.
It is a political strategy. Keep them dependent. And this, all parties do it. It's not just any one. It's not germane to any particular one. But what, as a people, what we need in this technological age where we have Google and we have access to information is we have to go out and seek better, and better for us in general, right? So, so one of those resolutions definitely could be, if you're going to do anything, invest or pay down debt or whatever, then it's a matter of navigating or managing that need for instant gratification. And it's easier said than done. But some of the things I would love to see, I would love to see us seek out these investment opportunities. It's coming?
Oh no, I was just telling you, you could encourage calls when you're ready.
Oh, I did that.
Oh, you did.
Early. Yeah. I did that a little bit early.
I sent it on WhatsApp, but
okay. Well, people are free to call in. I love that, and I also want to hear their ideas for the future as well. So investment opportunities like getting involved in the Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange. Now, not on the equity side. I'll obviously recommend the bond side to participate there. That's a quicker turnover. And then look at some of the other regional exchanges and international exchanges that you can participate in. Like, yes, you can participate in the U.S. market. And we'll break down that in the new year, exactly walk you through that process. And if you are investing locally, you do have those shares in the cable, you do have those shares in National Bank, you do have those shares in TDC, etc. Don't pull those dividends out. Make a commitment that you want to see these reinvested, that, there's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. And I remember I used to date this woman, Jamster, and she used to say, man, if we get together, if we get in a serious relationship, then she won't be able to enjoy the luxuries that she have because she feels like it's not that I would be cheap, but I wouldn't allow her to spend on certain things. And it's because I'm trying to save you from yourself, right? I like nice things, but there's a time when you say you want to accomplish X, and then you abandon it at the first chance that you get, then that becomes a problem.
It's like a ruthless bean counter cuts in, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah, so you really need to manage that. And if you're looking for opportunities as well, we have a mutual fund company called UTI based in Trinidad. They just opened shop in St. Lucia, so they're going to be making their way up into the region, and they should have a minimum investment point of like $100 US, and you get access to participate on the U.S. stock market. Now, I'm not sure what the transaction costs will actually be there. All right, and then debt reduction.
Let me ask a question. I mean, because I know this is probably on lots of people's minds. How some people I know would have misgivings when they consider what happened to Usain Bolt. You mean a similar type outfit in Jamaica?
So it would be different, right? So Bolt's issue came that a financial advisor working in the office that was responsible for managing his money, she stole it. Mm-hmm. Right. So whereas with a mutual fund, you're putting the money into a separate managed, it's almost like you have your own account, right? So So this company they're consolidating all the money that they get, they're pooling it, and they're going out and buying shares on your behalf. And then you, instead of then having to, let's say, to replicate their portfolio might cost you $1.5 million, you could get in for $100 because they're spreading that across multiple companies. So it's a little bit different, but you could log in and every day you'll get your return perspective and so on. What was happening with Bolt is someone was managing his wealth and was misappropriating. And that's the issue. That's where one of the other financial resolutions that I have come in. Commit to enhancing your own personal financial education because it stems into everything else. You see, the definition of personal financial literacy is to garner the skills and capabilities to navigate within the global economy and also local economy. So it's not just, we're in our household, and it gives us an understanding of small businesses that we tend to open. Just driving around the island, every corner there's somebody selling drinks, there's somebody selling food, there's somebody selling clothes. These are people that are investing dollars, right? But for them to actually grow into a business, then they need more.
Are the provision
education.
vendors chopped liver? Come on.
Yeah?
Are the provision vendors chopped
Oh, well,
liver?
the provision vendors,
just
absolutely. No, you're absolutely right, because they're up on the agri strip there in your town, right? So all these things together, right? So we have to commit to enhancing our financial education, which again, that played into something that the government announced, right? Because that's one of they said comprehensive financial education topics for the youth. I was lucky enough to see the Minister of Education this weekend, and I pushed that the importance of this, and he agreed, and he said that's why he's starting the conversation, and they're starting it in Parliament. So time will actually tell, right? And so on. So that has to be one of our financial resolutions. As a family, we sit down and start with our children. Start with our children and get them exposed. This concept of don't tell them money don't grow on trees. Tell them why. Mommy and daddy makes this amount of money. Here are the bills, and this is the thing. Like literally, my 13-year-old daughter, every time, Daddy, how much do you make? I know how much mommy makes, right? So then she navigates her ask based on what's happening. Sometime last year there was a financial hardship within the family. And so therefore, for her birthday, she was like, you know what? I want less. She's then able to manage her own self because we exposed her from a young age. She's had her own debit card since she was 7. Right.
That sounds like an immersive civics lesson. Her life.
That's what it is. It's practical, right? And usually when she has these outlandish acts or suggestions or wants, then you're like, hey, I will give it to you. I'll actually give you more. But this is what you have to sacrifice. So she's then able to make those decisions, and she's not reactive. She becomes proactive. You want to go to Starbucks? Let's buy a share of Starbucks, right? And that's the conversations that we have. And it's because we wanted her to have a better understanding than we have, right? We want her to have that exposure to financial education. And that's why we have this show. And kudos to Win FM and everybody that did this show, all the hosts that came before me. We have shows like this to help you enhance your financial education. So go back, listen to past episodes, listen to some of the speakers that we have on, right? And engage with the content and ask questions. Anybody could tell you, if you inbox me or WhatsApp me, I will answer you. Unless it's really complicated, then I'll send you a bill. But even at that point, that's an investment in your own self, right? So set up investment strategies when you're talking to your family, have a debt reduction strategy, enhance your own financial education. Let's start to build up our emergency funds. That should be a financial resolution. And typically you look at your expenses and your necessities and so on, and put at least 6 months aside, right? That money should just stay in your savings account. Like, we're not going to care too much about inflation there, but that's the fund that if something happens, some unexpected accident, some unexpected maintenance issue, some unexpected health issue, some unexpected labor issues, and somebody lost their jobs like we saw with COVID. Many years ago when people walked into work at Marriott and then realized they were fired, right? These kind of different things. We have to have something set aside to protect our own interests, because that way you would disrupt the whole family dynamic. And this is especially as if you also don't have credit cards, right? Now, some people use credit cards for emergencies, but at the same time, if you could have cash on hand, that would make you a lot more liquid and for a cheaper cost in general. So that's definitely another resolution. What else would I think would be a great financial resolution for the new year? Managing financial stress. Managing financial stress. You know, financial anxiety is such a major issue. You see, like, for example, when you see older people working, it's sometimes not because they want to work, it's because they have to work, right? You know, when children ask their parents for something and the response is usually aggressive, especially when it's a money ask, it's not because they don't want to give their children or they don't want to spoil them or want them to participate. Sometimes they just don't know how to navigate it. And when some of our students go off to universities and they're trying to manage these loans and make it, and you know, they understand that their families may not be in a position to help them, and so they have a bad semester in school, we could attribute that many times to financial anxiety and financial stress. And that's where the role of sound planning comes in. That's where we sit down and we have these open dialogues. I'm always going to advocate for open dialogues when it comes to money, especially in couples and younger couples, because that's why a lot of people end up in divorce, right? And broken relationships because of that failure to truly sit and think about money. So how can individuals manage financial stress effectively? Develop a plan. Develop that roadmap. If we could see where we're going while we're going through it, we will understand and be more likely to stick and stay anchored. So focus on what you can control. We can't control everything. The only constant that we have is Murphy's Law, that something could go wrong, it will go wrong. And if you can't do it alone, seek professional advice. All right, I know that's a little bit difficult in this market, but don't go to friends and family that has the same issue that you do. All right, if you're trying to level up, you have to talk to somebody that's on the level you're trying to get to. Otherwise, you might run the risk of repeating patterns, and it might not be to your best interest in that way.
Let me ask you a question, because I feel like this is probably the first maybe New Year's resolution, if all that stuff you're talking about is to be. What would you tell people? Where do they go to get the basics in getting their financial education up?
You could get it from certain books. For example, mindset. We have we are a riskless society. We don't take a lot of risk. And what I mean by that, yes. So I said, for example, we have a lot of small businesses around. We see those and they have leverage. They have rental stores. They have commercial spaces. But the vendors on the street, right? Not the food vendors and some of the new bars that pop up. When things go slow, they shut down because they have no commitment, right? There's no leverage. So it's more of a monetized hobby. It's like a hustle, a side hustle.
Isn't that kind of harsh, though, to say that they have no commitment?
Well, I'm not saying they don't have commitment, but by a definition of a business has leverage, right? Because you're in that whole mindset of expansion, right? You're hitting that whole mindset of growth. When you could easily just walk away, then it's more of a side gig or side hustle, etc. And again, not trying to be harsh, but it's just one of those realities, right? I think we have a lot of resources here where people can seek help. We have the SBDCIC pushing out a lot of programs. I just learned of a micro lending facility. It's PGC or ECPGC, something up east. Something.
Oh, central bank?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're
okay.
sort of, it's some sort of microfinancing. And you could also books, change that mindset. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a great way to start. It shifts between an investor's mind, how you view money and viewing money as a tool rather than just like a necessary evil to survive. If you view money as a tool, it changes perspective. You know, I had a conversation with a friend. She's an avid listener of the show. She has the knowledge. One of the things, like, for example, she wanted to do was to pay off a mortgage, right? And I understand her perspective because psychologically it's a benefit to her. But there are other productive uses of that income, and she knows that, right? Because she's educated. So there's that delicate balance there when it comes to that. But it's man, you seek the advice where you could get it. You just have to be careful in who you take it from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. Okay, it's
So I don't,
10. Yeah?
I don't think Mr. Warner is going to make it then.
It doesn't.
Okay,
doesn't
so
look
then what we'll do, let me wrap this up and then we'll spend the last 20 minutes and I'll give you my perspective on the Prime Minister's highlights. So the last thing I want to talk about is sticking to these financial resolutions. Strategies to stick to the financial resolutions. Regularly review your progress. Regularly review your progress. The same way when we take on healthcare plans, or you see everybody in the gym now or working out, or all these exercise clubs popping up because carnival is coming. The same way you're monitoring your progress there, we have to monitor our financial progress. And note that even if there's a limitation, there's a hurdle, there's a bump in the road, and we're not where we want to be, you don't stop. You acknowledge it, but you keep going. You acknowledge it, but you keep going. And you do this as a couple, you do this as a family. Again, it should be all hands on deck approach. And as a household, you move through this process. So that means parents, you have to see your children as stakeholders and not just your children, and not just liabilities, and not just, someone that you have to take care of. Get their opinion. They're equipped and out there in this new modern world. So if they're old enough to give it, listen to them. And then when they suggest something that's a little bit out there, it's a teaching moment, a teaching opportunity. Adjust your goals if necessary. So if you've listed these financial goals, if they're not working, then pivot. You're not anchored to them. These are dynamic things. They're not static. They're there for you for your benefit. You're in charge, right? You're in charge. You have that choice. And seek accountability through supportive communities. Seek accountability through supportive communities. Communities that would understand. Communities that will be able to hold you accountable. That have the knowledge base that could call you out if you're not doing what you want to do. Communities that will help keep you on track to successfully achieving these goals. So that's highly what I recommend there. Any other questions, James, on this? Then we could switch.
Well,
to...
I really, but we're gonna hear from First Federal, but then I really want us to hear some more insights on, what passed on
Has it
on
passed
Friday.
yet? Have they
Actually,
they did the final reading?
they're
doing that
continuing,
today.
but they haven't started yet.
Oh,
so.
okay. All right,
So you want
cool.
to take the quick break?
Yes,
and,
please.
Come back,
Yeah.
hear from FF, and come back.
Save or borrow money. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. First Federal makes your needs a priority. Respect, integrity, rich. Commitment, honesty, rich. We're the first choice for your financial needs. Need a loan, we say yes. Need to save, we say yes. To invest, we say yes. We are your first choice. Need a loan, we say yes. Need to save, we say yes. To invest, we say yes. We are your first choice. First Federal Cooperative Credit Union, making financial success first nature.
And we are back with the good doctor.
All right, so let's jump into the the Honorable Prime Minister's announcement. The country was eagerly tuned in last week, and about 4.5 hours into his 5.5 hour presentation, we got a lot of major highlights. And what I'm most interested in is not even the highlights. I actually want to see the ministerial allocations and how that works and so on. But, maybe those we'll cover that in January in the new season of Money Matters. But first of all, we're going to just jump right in and we're going to hit some of these highlights and extend the conversation that I started with Mr. CJ Warner back on Friday. And he was supposed to be in studio. Unfortunately, he had a conflict that we couldn't get to. But we're going to go one by one. I think there are about 10 major highlights that came in. I'm going to knock those that are easy off pretty quickly, and then we go from there. And the easiest one to get rid of out the gate is no new taxes. And let me say in general, overall, I think this was a budget for the low to middle class. I think this was a budget address for the low to middle class. And I understand it's coming from a position to provide some sort of economic relief to the citizenry and the residents here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and there's the avid benefits that would obviously come as a result of that. And so I think that, and normally some budgets people would say, oh, you're only benefiting the rich and so on. We still have some interesting things that we'll dive into, but largely it's something that's there for the lower to middle class, and still also obviously caters to the investment portion of our economy. Now, and within the context, we're going to describe this as from an economic perspective. That's the framework. GDP is equal to consumption, investments, government spending, which is a subtraction of taxes minus government spending, and exports. So that's the context. Now, whenever we see some of these redistribution of incomes that we've seen this past year, and even within these budget announcements, we're really trying to encourage different parts of the GDP equation. And here we have consumption being the major aspect that we're trying to move that needle on. So do we know magnitudes? No, but that's what that is going, whereas the corporate tax rate was trying to hit investments as well as potentially net export reductions, etc. So that's the context from which we're going to jump in. So first one, know your taxes. That's a good thing. I mean, you could take that to the bank, and this is a good thing. So they're know your taxes, but there is the potential of a new fee, an increase. We had, I think it was the unincorporated business tax that was lowered to 2% that the Prime Minister didn't address there, but if you're a business owner, you're going to see that go back to 4%, and that's on all revenues, whether you make money, lose money, etc. So even though, we have known your taxes, we've seen that there are some potential changes in fees that will be coming. We see in our sister island of Nevis, there's talk about increasing utility costs, where the government might stop subsidizing certain things. We haven't heard those announcements in St. Kitts, which is very good in that instance for the people, because it would be one thing to give and then just take it right back. But then we see in here largely we'll have no new taxes, so we won't have an increase in value added tax, no custom taxes, etc. Oh, is he here? Okay. All right, so no new taxes. And then the one that I'm going to talk about, we see that Mr. Warner might actually join us. That's a great thing. So since we talked about this on Friday, I'll mention it real quick. The whole financial education and savings program. Now, I love this. I've committed my life to financial education, and that's what I do. I live and breathe this daily. And so I really applaud the government for this $1,000 savings account for all of our younger citizens. And the age ranges they gave was 5 to 18 years of age. And now we don't know much, right? It's probably the devil is in the details, of course, and maybe it's in the budget narrative or whenever this comes out and there's more explanation. But, some of the questions then become, why not start at zero? Those first 5 years are critical. Now the question is this a savings scheme or is this an investment scheme? If it's an investment scheme or savings scheme, what's that return on investment? How is it going to be funded? We've heard some in the media about a combination of shares and cash. Well, if it's shares and cash, which shares, which corporations, what's the valuation of those shares? And if those corporations lose money on an annual basis, let's say, for example, we have another freak event like COVID, when there's a major contraction and potential of loss, then is that passed on to the holders of these accounts? What about accessibility? Who manages it? The frequency of contribution is a one-time thing. And is it all citizens or all citizens resident in St. Kitts and Nevis? There were a lot of questions that came out of it. No one is doubting that it's a good program. All right, it's a good program. But how can we actually make sure the intended benefit? If there's about 8,000 people within this category of 5 to 18 years of age, that's about $8 million a year. If there were to be an annual funding, but if it's a one-off funding, $8 million, then what's going to happen? What's the benefit? And what about somebody that ages out at 18? Right? Is there a max amount of money that they intend that each person should have? So we really want to be able to answer these questions. Investment in shares of government majority-owned companies. We've seen this being done across the region. We saw it done in Antigua, where they offered a percentage of government shares in West Indies Oil to the average citizen in Antigua and Barbuda. So this means this is a good thing for St. Kitts and Nevis, where we might actually have access to the cable.
What's West Indies Oil?
It's I think like a oil storage refinery company somewhere in Antigua.
In Antigua, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right up there off of Friars Road. I
Okay.
think that's what it's called. So we have these investments in shares, and so you could get access to the cable and maybe even others, right? Because it's Casper, the port, maybe Skellig. We don't know, right? We don't know what we'll have access to. Maybe the government shares in Christophe Harbour, again, we might have access to, or the government shares in Kitishan Hill, or Belmont Estate. Maybe we may have access to those. We don't know, all right? But if we do have access to those, that is a good thing.
Bank of Nevis.
I don't think they're
Don't
government.
they?
I don't. Think
No, I meant. Oh no, I was just talking like investment options. and
Well, yeah,
stuff,
they will definitely be, but specifically from the budget address, we're like, they'll have, you'll basically get access to these shares and entities where the government is the majority-owned shareholder. So some questions there, and that's why I think they were very vague in when they would launch it. It says launching in 2024, because there's some critical things to actually work out, because all these companies are going to have to be evaluated. They're going to have to come out with a number of shares that they could have. Maybe some of them have already, and they do this because they should be reporting numbers. But if you're going to come to the public, you're going to have to actually break these things down further and make them more available. And the thing that I really loved was bullet point 3, the comprehensive financial education topics for youth and young people. I don't think it's just for youth. I think it should be widely accessible to the entire population. We have a national crisis when it comes to financial literacy that affects in which our people do business, affects in which our people make financial decisions, and so on. So we want to be able to capitalize on this and spread this to as many people as possible, right? So that would be a great thing. Now, with 12 minutes left in the show, we have the illustrious Mr. Warner just walked into the studio, and I'll let him determine some of the topics that we'll talk about. I know I did get a request this morning for one particular topic all the way from New York that they really want to hear his perspective on. So as soon as he gets locked in, we will get started. Good morning, Mr. Warner. How are you?
Same happy returns. The life continues to be kind to me.
Awesome.
Illustrious. Good grief.
Oh yes, I was so happy about our conversation on Friday. It's really rare that I get to find somebody and engage somebody of your mind, right? That's a beautiful mind. So I had a question out in New York this morning. They said, "Hey, I'm going to work, but I need to be able to play this back to hear Mr. Warner's take on minimum wage." Now, I know we talked about this on Friday, but let's talk a little bit about that, the national minimum wage increase and what that means for the economy in general. What's that projected impact that we should expect? They really wanted to break down and get your perspective on the minimum wage changes.
The minimum wage increasing from $9 to $10.75, which, as we know, is it about a 17% increase?
Yeah.
A 17% increase in the minimum wage. It is welcome. However, the question, and then when you add the further increase in July of 2025, it becomes $1,250. First of all, I want to disabuse people of the notion that minimum wage is $360 a week. The minimum wage is $9 per hour. If you don't work 40 hours, you're not guaranteed $360. And in July of 25, if you don't work 40 hours, you don't get $500. But the question is, can the private sector absorb an increase of 25% over 18 months?
That's a good question.
That's a significant change because, let's face it, if I'm presently earning $9 per hour, and you're earning 11. We have a $2 difference. When mine's become 10.75, just because you're already earning 11, will you expect your boss not to increase yours? It would be rather unfair if the differential of $2 is not maintained. And if all you do is maintain the $2 increase, the $2 difference, when mine goes from $9 to 10.75 and yours goes from 11 to 12.75, my increase is greater than yours as a percentage of where we started. And so the minimum wage increase, whilst welcome for those at the bottom of the wage scale, has the potential of inflation built into it, because those above will expect some maintenance of the differentials that they had with the lower paid persons. And so the question is, I always ask, and I know that the technocrats would have done their math, and I would love to hear the Prime Minister tell us, what is this likely to cost? How much additional wages, salaries are likely to be brought into the economy? Isn't there likely also to be loss of jobs?
Right.
Because when I am expected to add, let's assume all of my workers were at minimum wage, and I'm now adding a 17% increase in my payroll. Can I change the prices of the goods or the services I provide to compensate for that 17% increase in my payroll? Do I have the ability to absorb it? And beyond those who are earning the minimum wage, there's likely to be a certain expectation of those who are providers of services, even when they're self-employed, to pay themselves more. It would not be unreasonable, or it would not be unexpected if bus operators were to say, hey, you've carried up the minimum wage from $9 to 10.75.
Yes.
So why should I now continue to only get $2.50 for this ride?
Exactly.
They're now in a position to pay more. So therefore, I expect to get more because the price of my tires have gone up.
Yeah, the externality effects of these decisions.
And so the increase in minimum wage is always, on the face of it, a welcome benefit for those lower paid persons. But the question is, what inflationary effects would it have? And one would love to hear an honest declaration as to what did the technocrats, the economists within the Ministry of Finance, what did they project the effect it would be on the economy? We know the multiplier effect in terms of you put money into the economy and it's going to circulate, because people at the bottom of the pay scale tend to spend most of their money,
yes.
well, all of their money.
Yes.
Whereas the higher paid people, they're more likely to have, the savings and investments. And that is the concern that I have. I'd like to hear the actual numbers. After all, those in the minimum wage in the private sector are getting a 17% increase. Those in the public sector are getting 8% increase.
Not all of them, right?
Well,
well, on paper, yes, all of them. But
they're getting an 8% increase.
Yeah.
So the question is, those who are at the lowest level of the public payroll, will their wage be subject to the equivalent change? I don't know what is the lowest level wage salary paid in the public sector, so I'm at a loss.
Whatever it is,
whatever it is, will it be adjusted to be the equivalent? And those are questions that one would love to hear the answers to.
But Mr. Warner, at the same time, so we see these increasing costs that are obvious, right? And usually the response is saying loss in labor, reduction in hours, etc. But we didn't see or hear of any incentives for this group, because we saw it on the corporation side, the larger companies, that reduction in that tax rate. So they may have some minimum wage workers. It might be easier for them. They were incentivized with a steep cut. Whereas for more of the smaller businesses, those who pay that unincorporated business tax, for example, as opposed to corporation tax, they didn't get any of that relief. In fact, their sunset with that tax reduction of 2% is ending, and we didn't hear of any extensions on that. So that's even more reason for concern in my mind.
I would hope that it was an oversight, and that, however belatedly, that this will change, because it cannot be fair that for corporations which have the ability to, you could say, determine what their taxable profits are. However, an unincorporated business doesn't have the ability to determine what its revenues are. If more people buy goods, or if the price of the goods they sell go up, it means that their revenues are going to increase. They're going to pay 4%. And so therefore one hopes that this was an oversight and that this will be remedied, because to have what is the de facto 100% increase in their tax rate, plus, as I've pointed out in the past, the exempt portion of their revenues
Hasn't been updated.
has
in
not
years.
been updated since the tax was introduced in November 2010. 13 years, no revision. In that 13 years, the corporate tax rate has gone down from 40% to 35% to 33%, now to 25%. And so it is a possibility that the small businesses are the ones who will be, for the better word, suffering greatest from this increase in the minimum wage, deserving as it is
Yes.
among the lower paid.
And that's the concern, because, as you said, there's going to be inflationary pressure all across the board, and if we're not able to meet that, then producers have no incentive to produce more, right? Because they could get more money by keeping supply fixed, right? And that's where the inflation comes in. But real quickly, Mr. Warner, we only have like 2 minutes, unless Jamster gives us more time, but this 8% salary for all government workers. And the reason why I made my comment is because the government also said there's going to be a pension for all government auxiliary employees, right? A contributory pension. And that's anybody hired, well, that's all. But then they also go on to say for all workers who are monthly paid, all salaried workers. And then that triggered my thing, because I didn't know that we had no defined pension for people hired after, let's say, 2013. So I asked some friends that worked in the civil service, and they was like, yeah, I have no pension. Yeah, I've qualified for gratuity. I've put in 10, 12 years, but we were not a part of a pension scheme. I didn't know that. So they're going to be included in this new contributory pension. And the thought is that it might actually be that 8% contribution.
That is because I'm told that the intention was to give a real increase of 5% to public sector workers. But because they not previously implemented 3% contribution from workers, now you're going to get an 8% increase, but 3% of your salary will now be taken as a contribution. So the take-home portion of your salary will not go up by 8%. It will only go up by, in rounded numbers, 5%. Because now 3% is going into the contributory fund.
Okay.
And so again, one would like to hear what the numbers are.
Yeah.
How much money will be paid by workers now into the fund, into the pension scheme? Because public sector workers have a sort of double dipping. They get Social Security, they contribute 5%, they're now going to be contributing 3% towards a pension fund. And so they have two sources of income after they retire. The private sector doesn't have that.
Yeah, and that's something I mentioned to Jamster earlier. I want to talk about real quickly, and especially in the new year, planning for retirement for the private citizen in the absence of pension plans. There have to be some sort of private program established. Like in the United States, we see individual retirement accounts for those people that do not have employer-sponsored plans. Mr. Warner, final word, and then we have to switch for voices.
One hopes that over the next, I understand that the session has not yet completed. And one other thing, I always look forward with great anticipation to the auditor's report, to the audit report, which in this case will be for the year 2022. I have not seen it as yet, and I hope that maybe if you are available early next year, when this will be there, we could discuss
Of course.
what the auditor had to say about the year 2022.
Of course, because that's one of the things. I want us to have a show on the economic outlook for our federation very early on. I mentioned to Jams, I would really love to see the ministerial allocations, to start to see patterns over time, to see where the government thinks their priorities are. All right, so Mr. Warner, thank you for coming through. I know you had a conflict. Really appreciate your time.
I would like to say no charge, but I would simply say my fee is deferred.
All right, I love that. I love that. And to the listening audience, look, it's been a great run so far with Money Matters. We're building momentum. Let's keep the conversation going. I'm your host, Dr. Terrance Martin. And remember, it takes financial knowledge to know that you're making financial mistakes. So see you in 2024.
Save or borrow money is easy as 1, 2, 3. Plus federal makes your needs a priority. Respect, integrity, rich commitment, honesty, rich. We're the first choice for your financial needs. Need a loan, we say yes. Need to save, we say yes. To invest, we say yes. We are your first choice. Need a loan, we say yes. Need to save, we say yes. To invest, we say yes. We are your first choice. First Federal Cooperative Credit Union, making financial success first nature.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WIN FM.